5, 4, 3, 2. Apparently it says we're live. Do you think we're live?
I guess chat will tell us.
Yes, chat will tell us if we're live.
Yeah, chat will yell at us if we're live.
If we're alive rather than live. If this is working, please tell us your favourite number. And it must be at least 17 digits. One of which must be a decimal point.
3.14159. I can't remember past that.
So welcome everyone to impromptu live stream. I'm Ian Cutress from TechTechPotato as I bash my microphone, and this is George Kozma from Chips and Cheese. He's
Hello.
been on a few videos on the channel, and we're in Denver, Colorado, early to talk about supercomputing, and also because we're high above sea level. And so let's adjust.
High, yes.
Yeah. Let's adjust to the low pressure. Supercomputing was last in Denver in 2019. I was here. I remember it being a lot colder.
Kind of wish it was colder, but that's my personal preference.
It's today was about 60 degrees. Last time I was here, it was more like 30. But also the air is very dry. So
Yeah. So if you see us taking drinks,
we went on a kombucha spree earlier. And aside from energy drinks, we went and bought kombucha. So
he bought the energy drinks. I bought coffee.
Yeah, well, same difference.
Yeah.
Same difference. So I've been meant to be getting on a stream for a while, but my house is a mess. So here we are in a hotel in Denver. Technically, this is day -2, -1.
Well,
so it's what, Saturday?
yeah, so -1 tech. Well,
Saturday the 11th, and the show floor opens on the 14th, 13th, 14th?
13th.
13th. So the couple of days beforehand, we've got some tutorials, we've got some workshops, we've got some meetings already, just because it's such a busy event.
Yeah.
And there are some parties.
Yes, many parties. Yes.
You know,
networking.
Really what you want is a bunch of HPC enthusiasts
Drunk.
getting drunk.
Yeah.
Talking about how, I overclocked a Xeon Phi once.
No. The issue with drunk HPCers is when they start talking about stuff that they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
That's the real.
Well, it's always with these events. You do get some engineers. Supercomputing is slightly different because it's a mixture of a trade show and a research event. So you have lots of research papers presented. So you do also get the technical people involved as long as the sales people. And the technical people, I find, internally, they're working on the N+2 product.
Yeah.
So they don't know what's public and what's not.
Yeah.
So we'll see about that and what happens.
Your famous interview with Mike Clark, when he was talking about, you're like, oh, what are you working on? It was sort of wink, dot, Zen 5.
No,
right?
No. That's because just after Zen Plus launched, he made a comment about working on Zen 5. And I spoke to him after Zen 4 came out saying, well, the timeline lines up that you're probably working on Zen 8. And he said, I'm not going to say, but your math works out. So it's that sort of thing. And there are a number of people in the industry who you learn can be sufficiently lubricated. And it helps whether they're at the peak of their industry and also involved in standards bodies, mentioning no names. So yeah, I'm here early. Obviously representing myself. You're here for Chips and Cheese. If you don't know Chips and Cheese, go check their website out. They do the deep dives we used to do at Anantech. And yeah, you're here by yourself. I'm bringing in Felix.
Yes.
Who's going to be doing some work for me. He's actually in the air right now. And my cameraman, Dom, who's done camera work on a number of videos that you may have seen already. He's coming in for a few days because we've actually got some content to shoot. I mean, aside from this live stream.
Yes.
Aside from this live stream. The show floor is pretty big. I mean, it's the same venue that was here as 2019, but this is your first supercomputing.
Yes.
You went to Computex earlier this year.
Yes.
And that was kind of like...
overwhelming, considering that was my first real event.
To be fair, Computex was my first real event, but back in 2011.
Yeah.
So, so supercomputing is a much smaller affair because it's a much more dedicated crowd.
Yeah.
And we went today, we got our badges, we got bags. Do you have the bag there to hand?
Yes.
It's these events always like to give out a little minor freebie. So this year's freebie is just literally a bag for which you've bought a mug. To be honest, you can put your kombucha in the mug. I thought about that beforehand.
Yeah, but I wondered how to clean the bug out.
That's fine. Yeah, and we went to the press room, and the press room here is nice because they keeps a track of how many attendees.
Yeah.
And as we came in, it was it 14,000?
It was 12. It was like 12.8, and then it was
13.9
13.9 or something.
Yeah. So most people obviously sign up before the event because they have to organise travel, or it's related to university, or it's related to their business, and then some people just turn out and arrive on the day and pay the entrance fee. So it slowly creeps up over the week, and 13,000, which is about 4 times the size of international supercomputing, which happened May this year, I think. Yeah,
May, and then almost immediately following was Computex.
Yeah. Well, it's a 6-month separation because supercomputing is the event where the top 500 supercomputer list gets announced, and there's 2 of those a year. That's going to be an interesting topic to cover because we're kind of expecting a new number one. There are people with fingers crossed there's a new number one. There are people who are ready to say "I told you so" when there's not.
Oh yeah. So
let's go into this straight away. This is a good topic to go.
So if y'all don't know, the new number one is hypothesized to be, well, not hypothesized, the Aurora expected to be the Aurora supercomputer, which is at Argonne National Labs, and it is powered by Intel's Sapphire Rapids HBM.
So CPU Max.
Yeah, CPU Max, and their GPU Max, which is codenamed Ponte Vecchio.
Is it 60,000 chips, Ponte Vecchio chips?
63,000 Ponte Vecchio chips, which are paired with 21,000 Sapphire Rapids.
And they're calling it Aurora. Technically, this contract was given in sort of like the 2017 timeframe. It was meant to be Xeon Phi, and then Xeon Phi got cancelled. Then 10 nanometer happened, and Ponte Vecchio was the accelerator, essentially built to fulfill that contract. And it's finally ready, we hope. Earlier in the year, they said that they were installing all the racks. I heard they originally started putting in regular Sapphire Rapids with Ponte Vecchios.
And then moved over to...
And then over time started replacing. And the last I heard a couple of months ago is they were 75% done with that. So if they can replace 25% of the CPUs and run LinPack, which is the test for the top 500, then they can submit. Though the size of the Aurora is, if you look at the peak flops, so flops is the metric in 64-bit floating point. Flops is the metric. If you add up everything, it should be 3.3 exaflops. The current number one is
1.6 peak.
1.6 peak.
Which is the AMD-powered Frontier.
Yes. But what really matters more is the sustained performance.
Yes.
So this is actually when you run such a big workload over so many cores, over so many systems, and what kind of you get over time, because that's when you have thermal balancing and everything else.
Well, so not just that. That's not just the... So when we say run LinPack, that's far easier said than done. Because running LinPack on one node, fairly easy. running it across 63, 10,000 nodes actually. 10,000 nodes is much more complicated because not only are you having to deal with one system, you're now dealing with 10,000 systems all trying to run concurrently, all at the same time, and that is a bear, to put it lightly.
And this is what, 20 megawatts, that sort of scale range?
Aurora is estimated to be around 40.
40, okay. Yeah, it's the thing with systems this big is always, right, if your failure rate of hardware, right, is it's expected to fail once in 5 years, right, 1 in 1,500, essentially per day.
Yeah.
If you've got 63,000 pieces of silicon, you expect to get 20 plus hardware failures a day. So that's the difficulty, especially because LinPack also isn't it's not the easiest thing to run. It takes time to run, to dial in the performance. You need dedicated. So many supercomputers these days are big, but they don't submit to the list because LinPack is just...
Yeah. So we tried running LinPack on Ponte Vecchio for a Chips and Cheese article. I spent 3 days trying to fine-tune it. Just for one GPU, and not even the full GPU, just part of the GPU, the Max 1100 SKU. After 3 days, I just had to give up because at that point, I was just banging my head against the wall and getting nowhere.
But you're not an Intel paid engineer with access to all the documents.
But my point is that even trying to optimize for one GPU is hard.
Yeah.
Trying to optimize for 63,000 GPUs, which you could argue is really double that because of how Ponte Vecchio works with either you can configure it in one tile or two tile mode, or basically make this one GPU look like one GPU or make it look like two GPUs, like what Frontier does. So it's a very complicated procedure.
It's like trying to shave somebody's mustache with a laser. They're on the moon, you're still on Earth.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. But so the Aurora, I'm expecting it to submit a number. Maybe even just 90% of the whole system, right? One of the things is these systems get upgrades over time as well. So Lumi, the supercomputer that was number 4, that's been upgraded a couple of times. Yeah. Frontier's been upgraded a couple of times. Fugaku has another upgrade. That's the ARM-based system in Japan. That used to be world number 1. Is it number 2 now or number 3? 2? Okay.
It's number 2.
And then along with the top 500, there's also the green 500, which is more of a measure of energy efficiency. And AMD's MI250X takes a lot of those points along with Fugaku.
So, if I remember correctly, Fugaku actually isn't that efficient because it's half an exaflop for like 30 megawatt, 35, 40 megawatts, if memory serves. So compared to Frontier, Aurora, or the new, surprisingly enough, the new H100 blades aren't that much more efficient than the MI250 blades in Frontier, but we'll see that develop over time.
It's a quote on system efficiency, not silicon efficiency as well. So there is that. So supercomputing is where we hit the top 500 list. We get to also see which OEMs are the ones delivering those systems, whether it's Dell, Lenovo,
HPE,
or HPE.
Yeah, the big exaflop systems right now are all HPE.
Yeah, and you get to see what interconnects they're using, whether that's Slingshot or InfiniBand
or
what? Wi-Fi?
No, Wi-Fi would be funny, but no, I'm thinking more the new stuff that we're going to talk about later.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of that. So the big question with Aurora, it's do you actually want to turn your laptop?
Yes. Yeah,
you've got to adjust your sleep. Yeah, it's your sleep settings. So while we have you here, we've got the streaming PC here, and we've got a chat window up there. So anytime you chat, we can actually see in massive letters, just in case there's a question that somebody wants us to address. Top 500. I did a graph around about 6 months ago on the top 500 list, and what I did is I took all the machines with an accelerator, right, and I summed up the R-peak values
Of all of them.
of all of them, and I put them into a pie chart and I presented it at a couple of conferences. So this is the total sum of exaflops depending on your accelerator, right? Nvidia, which had 160 systems in the top 500, was 2.3 exaflops, sum of R-peak.
Okay.
AMD, with 10 systems, including number 1,
1.5, 1.6?
2.3
Ooh.
exaflop.
Interesting.
So if on this list we get Intel, and they hit an estimated 2.3 exaflops with one system, we will have, for the first time in history, the 3 accelerator vendors all with the same sum of R-peak. And that competition is good. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Competition is good. And also, governments providing lots of money is good. We should probably talk about the Chinese systems at this point, because the top 500 suffers from extreme bias.
Yeah.
That bias being only those who submit numbers get put on the list. And there are lots of players, lots of supercomputers in the world that don't submit numbers. And the big question for 2 years now is, where is China on this list? There are Chinese OEMs like Lenovo, like Taiwan, or
Be careful calling Lenovo Chinese. They're Hong Kong.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Just companies in the region. And there are a bunch of supercomputers there that run the Sunway architecture.
Okay. Sunway.
So these systems have submitted research papers through the years.
Yes.
They're even being part of the Gordon Bell Prizes. So the Gordon Bell Prize is essentially the best research paper that promotes the use of supercomputing through innovative research.
That's a complex title.
That's not the exact title, but that's the whole point of Gordon Bell. And what they always do is they pick 6 finalists in advance of a supercomputing, and one of the papers gets awarded the Gordon Bell Prize.
I thought it was more than one. I thought there was a...
It's for slightly different things.
Okay.
And obviously during the COVID years, all the research was focused around COVID, and I think even Fugaku got one of those maybe.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
I remember seeing Gordon Bell.
But last year, there were 2 years ago, there were 2 papers based on Chinese systems, these Sunway systems. This year, there's at least one of them. And the point is that these systems are multi-megawatt systems, tens of thousands of chips, using an alpha-like architecture.
Well, we don't really know what it looks like. So the best that I've been able to do is based on some translations of the Sunway ISA manuals. There are differences. There is some base from Alpha there, but
Alpha is a 90s
ISA.
Let's put it that way.
Okay, x86 is a 70s ISA by that logic, right?
Yes, but
so
I guess.
There is divergence, right? That lineage is there.
Yeah.
And yes, DEC Alpha. Alpha.
That Alpha. It runs in 64-bit mode, 32-bit mode, 16-bit modes. And
actually, I don't believe it does. I believe it only runs in 64-bit modes.
No, because the papers that they've showcased.
Oh, no, okay. When you said, I was thinking pointers.
Yeah,
no. So 64-bit, you were talking about FP64, FP32.
Yeah. I'm not talking about addressing modes. Yeah. So the types of papers that these systems have been publishing haven't been full what we call 64-bit floating point math, which is what the top 500 relies on for its metrics. So if you see a paper that is using this system that says 500 petaflops of FP16, that's not, you can't say that's an exascale system because you can't prove an exascale of double precision. And so there's this debate about if you actually put the whole system into 64-bit mode,
would it hit an exaflop?
Would it hit an exaflop? And 2 years ago, there was at least one journalist and a couple of senior people who said that they could confirm it was, but they couldn't release their sources.
Yeah.
And there's this whole thing about China not wanting to show its hand in what is a very Western way of
measuring. Well,
not measuring, just the whole fact that the showcase. I mean, Supercomputing as a conference is always in the US.
Yeah.
Most of the systems in top 500 have always been US based.
Actually, Japan has had a strong influence.
So Japan has been strong, with Riken and everything else.
Yeah, but based on some of the papers submitted this year, I'm still not convinced.
It'll be they're an exaflop systems.
Yeah, they may be good systems, but I personally have doubts that they are really exaflop. I mean, when what looks to be about half of the system is only getting about 115 petaflops in this newest data set.
Could be running at reduced frequencies. Again, we don't know.
It could be, but it's like at this point we're trying to pin the tail on the donkey and we don't even know what the donkey looks like.
But it's custom silicon that they're doing that they probably had made at TSMC before.
I believe
is it
the current... So the last generation, the SW2601 or 010, was TSMC 14 or 16 nanometer, if I remember correctly. But their newest one, I believe, is hypothesized to be on SMIC.
Okay. Well, so this is another thing as well, right? People are postulating that China are prepared to take non-leading edge nodes, legacy, essential nodes, whatever, and just up it by a factor 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of power. Again, these systems are designed to be 20, 30 megawatts a piece.
I mean, if you're scaling up to even 50 megawatts, that's not a joke to do, right? And if you're going to 100 megawatts, you're talking about not just insane power, like the power grid draw, but also the amount of power that you have to have essentially in supercapacitors on site that you're able to drain and fill in.
So back in the Raja Kaduri, was it Intel days?
Yeah.
They were talking about,
Zetaflop
requiring 100 megawatt, systems. So it's, companies on this side of the fence have thought about it or have started to think about it. It does require somebody to buy one.
Yeah.
Right, and the Chinese government is very good at doing that.
Yeah.
U.S. government is, they always put out tenders every now and again, so...
Well, granted, so the nice thing about when a government puts out a tender and it gets accepted, and once you can see the requirements of what it is and then who is going to build out, and that's always a nice thing to see, right?
Just don't tell the student how much their simulation costs to run. So the Gordon Bell papers have some insights into the architecture. I promised myself I'd actually go through it and explain it, one day properly or to the best of my ability. The new papers that come out this year have a bit more information, as they always seem to do. So maybe if we find time, we can go through those. But that's going to be a proper dedicated thing that one of us
would have to do.
would have to do. So, so that's the top 500. That's one part of supercomputing. The other parts of supercomputing. So you have let's play it 50-50. 50% is like a traditional trade show. Mm-hmm. You have a show floor. You have companies on the show floor that are a mix of universities wanting to show off their supercomputer and to students, to try and entice students to go study there. Then you have the OEMs like HPE, Dell, Lenovo, showcasing the systems that you can buy from them, but also the types of installations you can do. And they'll have talks at the booths about different things that they're doing to get people excited. I remember one year I went around trying to find as many Xeon Platinum systems, the sort of dual die 56 core, and I was going around asking how many people are buying these, and the answer was no. And,
not even a few, just no.
Just no. It's because people want to see it because they're like, ooh, this is it on the booth, but no. There are research institutions as well showing off some of their papers. One of the, I remember one year seeing Preferred Networks from Japan. They had a booth with a couple of posters. The Grape processors, for example, are always there as well.
Grape?
Grape. It's right. You'll see Grape on the show floor probably.
I know Preferred Networks is there.
Yeah.
This year, which is surprising.
Yeah, it's like I say, when I've seen them before, it's usually been just mentioned in posters.
Because I think they actually have a booth this year.
Yeah, so we'll see that. There'll be like the tier 2 system providers. I remember one year, there's a company called Lambda. We're offering 20% off of Nvidia boxes.
Yes.
If you use their discount code before Christmas.
Yeah.
Except they started at $300,000. So it's a lot of money to save, but a lot of money to spend. The more you save, the less you spend. And in terms of what else is on the show floor, it's an opportunity to go see a lot of these companies and talk HPC because there are so few events that are so HPC, high performance computing focused for supercomputers. And you'll get to see the show floor for the first time. I like walking around the show floor because you always see something new. Even on the 6th or 7th time around.
And then it's always fun to go up to like these companies that you've never heard of and they have this interesting idea and they see that you're media and either one of two things happens. Either they're really happy to talk to you or they say nothing. And it's like...
Yeah. Oh, who do you work for? I think one year, was it me and Patrick Kennedy from Serve the Home? Google was there. Showing, they had their old TPU boxes or whatever. The ones that were showing off. Excuse me. And we went up to one of the systems and we were having a look around. And we were so close up to the glass that our badges were obscured. So a Google person came over and started speaking to us. Then about 5 minutes later, I think one of us stepped back and he realized, oh, you're media, turned around and walked off. Conversation stopped. But, it's companies doing custom silicon for machine learning is going to be important. One thing that is going to be showcased here is a lot of AI chips.
Yes. So there's Grok, there's Samba-Nova, there's Samba-Nova, TensorTorrent, Cerebrus,
Untether. We even saw the Untether chip today in the press room.
Going up to the press room and the person, one of the people behind the booths, recognized Ian and he's from Untether. And he pulls out the chip and it's like, ooh, chip. Fun to play with.
It's day -2 and I've already been recognized twice. So, and there are dedicated sessions on AI chips for HPC. And for those who haven't thought about this, there are 2 ways AI chips can be used for HPC. One of them is machine learning. Can you use machine learning to reduce your search space?
Yeah.
Right, for whatever you're doing. Number two is actually running HPC code on the chip.
Yeah.
Because what is a lot of HPC code but matrix math, and what are AI computers good at? Matrix math.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is so a large question is, can your AI chip do FP64 matrix operations?
Yeah.
Because that ends up being a bit of a if you can't, then
most can't. However, there is a new era of HPC that's looking at, do you need 64-bit?
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why I'm bringing Felix to the show, is because he's spent a lot of time doing research into reduced precision mathematics. And on his schedule is this literally a session called "Is Reduced Precision the Future of HPC?" So he's going to go to that and hopefully get some good information from the people who are actually running these codes and trying to develop for them. But the AI chips, I mean, the Cerebrus chips, the San Manova chips, they've already been used in research papers for things like stencil compute.
Well, and if you see a lot of them, they're already being deployed.
Yeah.
Like I believe...
Well, no, so it's easy for a university to get a customized AI chip from a startup because the startup wants people to play with them.
Yeah.
And the people that are most malleable to code that is kind of dodge
are students.
Because students are cheap.
Yeah.
It's one of
and they don't know what they're really doing yet, so their paradigm hasn't been set.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but it's the companies, that's why AMD loves research institutions for their big MI250X installs. It's because they're the ones prepared to put the time and the effort to make the code to work.
Yes.
So it's we'll see. But yeah, so we'll have AI chips. We'll be speaking to the AI chip companies. But people like AWS are here, Azure's here,
and we have the super duper node.
Yeah.
The super duper node.
So one of the things coming up in the industry that people may have heard about is CXL, Compute Express Link. And so inside a server, you have PCIe, does a lot of connectivity between hosts and devices. And then you have things like UPI or Infinity Fabric, which goes between CPUs, or maybe CPU to GPU, or maybe GPU to GPU.
Yeah.
That's kind of like a coherent, faster fabric. But the question is, how do we scale beyond a node? Or how do you get a system that can use more? It's what I call the 42U system.
Yeah. Well,
the rack system.
It's the same issue of trying to get Limpack running on all these nodes. Yeah. It's the same fundamental concept of getting everything to work together, and that's very, very difficult.
Can you reduce a level in your protocol layer stack and get the performance benefit? So CXL is currently in CXL version 3.0, but in terms of silicon, we only have version 1.1 out today.
Well, at least in silicon that you can get your hands on, there is IP, like silicon IP that has been taped out for CXL 2.0 and CXL, I believe they just announced CXL 3.0 in silicon, but
So, but the whole point is, can you get a massive? Can you make a single system in a rack, the full rack? And there are two companies out there that are able to do this without CXL. They're actually using PCIe.
Oh, interesting! I didn't know that.
So PCIe technically does have the instructions in the protocol to enable this, but nobody's actually bothered to go do the hard work to enable it. Yeah. Just because there's a lot of hard work. And one of those companies is Giga.io. Now, full disclaimer, I'm doing some sponsored content with Giga.io. And the funny thing is, it's about this sort of thing, right? So they have what is called a PCIe switch, and each...
so like an Ethernet switch, but for PCIe?
Yeah.
Okay.
And each port is a PCIe 4x4.
So sort of like if you guys know the connectors on a lot of server boards where you can't just plug in cards, sort of that sort of plug-in, right?
Well, no, it's like an SFP.
Yeah, but that sort of
Yeah.
idea of just plugging it in and then...
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
so what you end up is with like a PCIe chain across multiple devices, and what they have is a system that is essentially 2 CPUs and 32 GPUs. It's like PCIe switches,
Yeah.
but done in a different way where you can partition off into different bits. Say if you have a multi-user system.
MIG.
Yeah. So say you need one user that needs 1 CPU and 10 GPUs, and another one that needs 1 and 22. You can split it that way. And so the one with 32 cards, which I'll have a video on, is called the supernode. So rather than just being a node, it's a supernode. What they're announcing, or what they have announced so far,
is the 64 version of that, and they're calling it the super duper node.
Yeah, which means the 128 will be the super duper mega node.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating concept, just being able to build bigger and bigger systems.
Yeah.
Obviously, questions about connectivity speed, latency, control.
Yeah, well, especially because PCIe is not coherent.
Yes.
So it can start getting really messy with NUMA domains and what does what in... It can get very, very complicated.
And the idea is that CXL at least solves a good chunk of that. Giga.io's whole thing is, well, we'll learn to do it today so that when we have our CXL products, we have the stack ready to go.
It's done.
And we've ironed out a lot of the edge cases already needed. So it's going to be fun. We're going to see those guys this week and see what they're doing. Another company that we're going to see. So one thing I didn't mention is also there are networking companies here, or discussions about the future of Ethernet. And then
Ultra Ethernet is a big thing.
And Mellanox is going to be here.
Well, Nvidia networking.
Nvidia networking is going to be here. The one thing that this crowd is going to know about more than any other crowd, and by this crowd I mean the supercomputing crowd, is a technology called OmniPath. Originally designed by Intel, originally canned
by Intel, but not really canned. It was essentially spun off into Cornelius Networks.
So a team inside Intel basically said, if you're getting rid of this IP, can we have it?
Yeah, can we take it? And when Intel announced that they discontinued OmniPath and that they discontinued support for OmniPath, that isn't completely true, because
they didn't do the marketing to say it's being sold to a company called Cornelis. Cornelis Networks, because the guy's called Cornelis.
Okay.
And so they essentially started from scratch with the 100 gig.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think they had
OmniPath.
I think they had the 25, the 50, and the 100 to start with.
So your home internet is probably on gigabit Ethernet. Maybe you have a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet connection. Top-end systems might have 5 or 10, all based on copper. Then after you go beyond 10, or even 10 itself, you get into the optical region. So 10, 25, 40, 50, and then 100. So that's Ethernet. InfiniBand has a similar progression. That's all optical and it's all enterprise. OmniPath sits very much as a different offering in enterprise, basically offering different performance profiles. OmniPath was optimized for a message passing interface, MPI.
Yes.
So a lot of HPC codes
is MPI.
Because you have multi-nodes, you have to send messages between nodes about data. And that message passing interface, or MPI, is critical. And OmniPath does really well, or was designed initially to do really well on that. And I remember being at Intel Developer Forum at either 2014 or 2015, where they briefed us on this technology for the first time. And then they grew it up to 100 gig, then disbanded it essentially. It got picked up by Cornelis. Cornelis had to start from fresh. So it's basically, we know how to design it, we know how to put it in silicon, but we don't have any tools and we need the engineers. And so they built it up. They relaunched the 100 gig. They relaunched 200 gig, or they developed 200 gig and launched it. And they announced earlier this year that they will have 400 gig OmniPath, and that's being launched this week. They have a party.
Yeah, and I believe
Wednesday night.
Yeah, I believe it's being launched this week, and then the actual product will be available next year.
Yeah, by end of next year.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just by next year sometime.
Yeah, to be honest, I think they've got the first spin of silicon back.
Okay,
and that's going to be the CN 5000.
Yes.
I spoke to them last year, ISC, International Supercomputing in May. I spoke to one of their engineers, and I got reached out by 2 different parts of the company at once to say, come see our thing. And I know Wendell's really hot on OmniPath right now. I actually messaged him. Unfortunately, he's not going to be at Supercomputing, but I know that he's got all the information for the announcement. But he said he has 11 systems today.
Yeah, and
running OmniPath. Half AMD, half Intel.
Yeah, which is honestly impressive considering that, one, I don't believe OmniPath was originally qualified on any AMD system.
No, because it came pre-Naples, pre-Epic first gen. So,
and the fact that he's having them work on 11 systems, apparently with no issue, is honestly amazing. And it sort of makes you ask, well, why did Intel can this?
Brian Krzanich.
Yeah. The BK era of Intel was dark days.
BK. Bonky Kong. Sorry, that's perhaps a bit too on the nose. So CN5... after I said it, I realised that perhaps I shouldn't. CN 5000, I think they're calling it, and we're going to see that. And it's last time I spoke to them, they said they actually have really good traction in Germany.
That doesn't surprise me, because if I remember, their biggest system was in Jülich Supercomputing Center.
Yeah, so there are still supercomputers on the top 500 list running OmniPath.
Yeah.
So it's not disappeared. Will in the chat says, since we're talking about networking, we have to talk about SC. I don't know how do you say it? Synnet.
I would say SciNet, but
so SciNet or
I would say SciNet, but
SCINet. So you may not know about this, but because there are so many systems on the show floor, there's also student cluster competitions. There's this. One of the big aspects to the show to organize is essentially networking.
Yeah, and I bet you the Wi-Fi will still not work very well.
Daryl says Skinnet in order to pronounce it. But no, so we're talking about terabits per second of data going in and out. But even making sure the building has access to all this data as well.
The logistics.
Yeah, because a lot of companies will want to phone home.
Yeah.
And imagine now in an AI era where you want to show training on your HPC system and you have to bring in terabytes of data from outside. You can't do that on the Hotel 40.
Yeah.
No, it was funny. Setting up for this live stream was amusing. So I've brought a system with me, a brand new system for video editing, and let's stream through that rather than my small, thin, and light Tiger Lake. And we were saying, why is OBS taking ages to download? Why is the stream dropping out during testing? Turns out my Steam was downloading Forza. The minute I closed Steam, it's like, oh yeah, now it actually works. We can actually stream properly. So, so having access to all of that and not having some idiot trying to download Forza is perhaps a good thing. If people are interested, the system we're streaming on is actually just here. I'll pick it up and the stream will disappear.
And then my laptop is over there so that we can see the stream.
So this is an 11980HK with an RTX 3080 in it. Taking that in my backpack.
Heavy.
My backpack coming here was £30, and my suitcase was only 50.
Only 50.
Yeah. Well, no, that's the limit I can bring.
Yeah.
23 kilos, £50. So other things at supercomputing, because we're not done yet. Let's mention all the parties.
Yes, all the parties.
So one thing to realize at supercomputing is, like I say, it's this mix between a trade show and a research conference, which means that you get a lot of students and a lot of people in the research positions. For a number of them, this is their main show of the year. They're big. Maybe they'll do a couple of others, or this may be their only one. So these people prepare for a 4-day event, basically, to the minute of what they're going to do, who they're going to see, and it's a big thing for them. This is like the only event that does merch that I go to. The only other one was the Linus Tech Expo, but you expect them to sell merch. And I'm actually wearing a T-shirt underneath here from Supercomputing 2019 that I still have.
I should have gotten the jacket that I got out of the bag.
Yeah, so we've already been to the venue and the store is already there. I got the T-shirt, you got the hoodie. I got last year's hoodie, but I didn't go last year. That was a present from Patrick Kennedy because I said I wanted something. But yeah, so these people to the hilt will plan the whole event. So as a result, you get this pretty eclectic mix. Maximum amount of press I ever see in a year is 20 as well. But yeah, which goes to like the 14,000 people.
Hey, at least the press room won't be super crowded.
No, it won't. But as a result, because for people and even for clients and customers and stuff, the companies will put on after show parties. It's like they're like extended networking sessions with booze. Yeah. And maybe something to eat.
More the booze than the eat.
Yeah. Mate, I'm going to bring up my supercomputing calendar because, let's see, there are things like the Dead Architects Society meal. There's the opening gala on Monday night. So show floor from 7 till 9 will be open for people to get a preview. After that is the annual Beowulf Bash. Yep. Which I can't remember if you have to sign up to that one or you just attend.
I think you just walk in from what Felix was saying. It sounds like you just sort of you have an SC badge and you're sort of just like waved through.
Yeah. So the annoying thing about that is I'm told it goes on every year. Yeah, I've never been invited. Nobody invites me to crap. So
hey, that's how I feel.
Yeah. It's and then Tuesday is a big day with a lot of events. Azure's having an event with AMD, HPE's having an event, AWS is having an event with Nvidia.
Actually, that might be Sunday. I remember that there was a different that event was actually moved. Because
there were so many events on Monday, some of them may have been moved. And then on that Tuesday, so many events may have got moved. And then Wednesday we have there's the Cornelis event. That's an Eventbrite sign up. And
I never got that email.
No, I did though. I'll send you a link.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So some of these are invite only as well. So you have to go to their booth and ask for an invite. Just don't tell them I sent you. Because I don't want that on my conscience when they get annoyed. Ouch. and then Thursday.
Thank you, Will. That's what I expect. What I was thinking, but
Will in the chat said that the Beowulf Bash is open. So if it just search for Beowulf Bash, I guess it's 1160 Lincoln Street.
I think that's right around the corner.
Is it?
Yeah.
So the funny thing is, we put this hotel not realizing what street it's on.
Tremont Street.
Yeah, and so we took a picture with a Tremont sign because Tremont is an Intel architecture. Hey, Davina. And we just thought, well, this is architecture, and we just ended up on a hotel on that street. So it's fun. So there's the parties. There's going to be Aurora.
Yep.
We're hoping it's going to be number one. Lots of AI chips, lots of Sunway, OmniPath. The thing we don't know much about what may be happening at supercomputing is AMD's.
Well, before we cover AMD, should we quickly talk about Grace Hopper? Because they did publicly announce that Jülich, that the European Jupyter system is going to be using Grace and Grace Hopper. That was public.
Yeah. I don't think anything else is, though.
No.
Okay.
But that is supposed to hit an exaflop of, we assume, FP64. Though NVIDIA has been kind of weird with their whole AI exaflop stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So
the whole thing about quantization is... So, one of the videos I want to do this week with Felix is just quantization. What is it and why do we care? So, that's a video to do. So let's talk AMD MI300. So AMD has an event going on December 6th.
Yep.
I'll be there.
I hope to be there.
It's called the Advancing AI event. If anybody from AMD is watching, George wants to.
Hi. Please send me one.
And so that's where we expect the MI300A, the APU version, and the X, which is the fully GPU version, to essentially... they've been announced, but launched is a different thing.
Yeah, so we know that MI300A has started deployment into El Capitan, which is anticipated to be the new number one after Aurora. So we know that that's at least in some sort of production.
So AMD have said that they expect a $400 million revenue bump in Q4 related to the sale of hardware to El Capitan, which is the MI300A.
Yeah. And then...
but they've said after that they don't expect any more HPC revenues from El Capitan.
Yeah.
Which basically means here's the hardware, go install it.
Yeah.
That's all going to happen on December 6th. The question is there going to be any El Capitan discussion at supercomputing?
There'll probably be. So AMD showed essentially what an El Capitan node is going to look like. I believe in September, if memory serves.
Was that 4?
Yes.
4 or 6?
No, it was 4 in a node, but 2 nodes in a 1U rack. So 8 essentially in a 1U space, all liquid cooled.
Oh, liquid cooled for the density.
But
at 600 watts or whatever.
we
don't know yet.
AMD, if you go and you look at the disclaimers and all the end notes and all that fun stuff, you'll see that AMD is rating some SKU of MI300A for up to 850 watts, which is not a low amount of wattage.
No.
MI300X is 750 watts, if I remember the end notes correctly, which is more in line with NVIDIA's H100, 700 watts.
Yeah. It's so the question is, given that the money for El Capitan is expected in Q4, El Capitan submitted to the leaderboard is expected in International Supercomputing in May.
Yep.
So the question then becomes, if Aurora doesn't submit now, will
Aurora ever hit it? And I don't know.
Will Aurora ever be number one? And to be honest, in terms of anything MI300, that might be the only thing being talked about.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and then there's also the big question of supposedly the rumor mill has this MI300C.
So let's switch. Supercomputing, the discussion is done. Yeah. The other thing we wanted to cover in this video was other events coming up. And the other big one for us, the one that we're interested in, there's two. Yeah. There's the Intel launch of Meteor Lake and Emerald Rapids on December 14th. Yep. And then the other one is AMD's December 6th Advancing AI event, which I expect to be purely enterprise focused and essentially the MI300 series flagship event. Yeah. X, A, and we keep hearing something about a CPU only version, but
if they did a CPU only version, which essentially what it would be is take if you've ever seen the image that AMD put out for MI300A, basically just take that CPU tile and put it where the GPUs are, right? Replace the three GPU tiles or stack tiles.
It'd essentially be a 96 core CPU. Yeah. With up to 128 gigs of HBM.
128 or even 192, depending on if they use the MI300X.
Yeah, I don't think they would, but
no, but
it depends how much they think it might cannibalize or where the customer is, right?
Yeah,
it's but the big focus of the MI300 series initially is Supercomputer El Capitan, and then after it's all talking about machine learning.
Yeah,
and all talking about machine learning. The things we don't know about the chip is essentially what quantization levels it will support on the low end.
So we do know that there are, so again, in the nice little end notes that AMD provides, that FP8 will be supported.
Which version?
If I remember correctly, AMD was backing E3M4.
So for those that don't know about quantization, you represent a number by an exponent and a mantissa. It's two different numbers that essentially determine the range and the accuracy. And when you have a small amount of bits, like 8, how you split between the exponent and mantissa basically determines how good a quality your numbers are. And it turns out that different versions, different amount of bits for exponent mantissa, some are good for training, some are good for inference, and some are useless. The question is, can you be flexible with what you code? There's a company out there who claims to have patented a flexible FP8 format. We can talk about that later.
Well, then there's...
But then, so like Tesla says that they do 2 versions of FP8 in their Dojo system.
Well, I know that, not IEEE, but there was essentially an announcement of the adoption of both FP8 formats as an MX format. Right. And depending on how that can be implemented, we might see potentially, I'm not promising anything, updates to older hardware that already support certain versions of FP8 to also support. Yeah. But whether that actually happens or not,
I'm not smart enough. Aside from FP64, FP32, none of the other floating point formats have what is known in the industry as an IEEE standard.
Yes.
But this is basically how you deal with denormals and infinities and everything else.
Well, I believe that they're finally starting to move on an FP16.
No. So my point is, when you have companies that say they're both doing FP16 or FP8, they may be completely incompatible with each other because of how they deal with the extremes, how they deal with caps, maxes, mins, infinities.
At least
with a standard, everybody would do the same, and they already do that with FP16, FP32.
Yeah, FP16, even though there's no IEEE standard, there is at least a general industry-wide accepted sort of, this is how you do it.
It just hasn't been codified.
Yeah, and if you deviate from that, then calling it FP16 is very suspect.
Yes.
But calling it something else, like how Google has BrainFloat 16 or BF16, that's not a standard per se, but is very widely implemented across.
Yeah, because it's brain flow. It actually caught the imagination of people, such that those people use it. However, if the standards body want to do something about this, I think really the main. If you just said before, what's the main floating point format that's not standardized that should be?
FP16.
Or BF16.
Well, no, FP16 because that really does need a standard. Here's the thing behind BF16.
I would say now it's FP8 though.
Sure, because there's already movement for FP16 being standardized, and BFloat 16. Even though there's no official standard, if you don't conform to what Google says, you can't really say you can't say it's BFloat 16.
Well,
so.
But again, I still don't trust that everybody does the same thing with infinities and denormals, even with BF16. It's I've spoken to companies like AMD, like Intel, and maybe even Nvidia, if I remember correctly. I've said, are you making conscious efforts such that all your hardware does the same within a given format? Because the answer used to be no. Now the answer is yes, but only within a company. Right? So all of Xilinx hardware should from this point forward conform to AMD's version of what an FP8 or an FP16 should do. Whereas previously they would have been incompatible without actually talking to each other, because you have to organize these things in silicon. But yeah, so MI300, the series, coming back to where we were, they haven't stated what versions of what quantization levels they're going to support. We can guess and make some...
Like, you can guess based on what format AMD was pushing at one point in time. I don't remember which version of it is, but AMD and Qualcomm were pushing one version. Nvidia and maybe I'm flipping those, but basically you had multiple big companies pushing two different formats, and that's never good for the industry in general. So luckily, most of these folks have come together and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. Now, let's go do this.
Yeah. Well, the other thing we don't know about what they might do with MI300 is how much they're going to push sparsity.
Yes.
So sparsity is a thing that you can add into machine learning to help it be more efficient, but it adds in a lot of excess math. Most of them zeros. Yeah. Thankfully, but. And they like to say if you can add in 25% sparsity, 50% sparsity, 100% sparsity, and you get double the performance. But if that performance is all 0 times 0 plus 0, it's not real performance.
Yeah, it's sort of
fake. Yeah,
performance asterisk maybe.
Do you count that 0 times 0 plus 0 is a couple of flops? No, this is a very philosophical question here. So my answer to this is yes, but only if the system doesn't recognize it and doesn't bypass it.
Yeah.
If you perform the power for the operation, then yes, it is.
Yeah.
However, most modern systems, because power is a premium, should identify, even in SIMD environments, even in big matrix multiplier environments, if it detects 0 plus 0 times 0, it should bypass the ALU and just say 0.
Or even if you're doing a matrix times a 0 matrix, like ideally you should be able to recognize, hey, this is a 0 matrix. Yeah. Your end result, I don't care what it is, it's going to be 0. Yeah. Like now you have positive and negative zeros. Yeah. Which is a whole mess in and of itself. But if you can basically just quantize it to plus minus negative, and your output is just plus 0 and minus 0. Yeah. We don't want to start talking about negative zeros. The mind boggles.
So in terms of into the MI300, hopefully we'll get a deeper dive also into the architecture It's going to have the equivalent of the tensor cores and everything else. We just need to wait and see till we have lots of information. The other things about AMD's Advancing AI event that are likely going to be on the cards is maybe a few things about Xilinx's AI engines.
Yep.
The key thing to note here is that it looks like from AMD that this is an enterprise-focused event. So I have had some discussions about people saying, well, what about the consumer side of AI?
Yeah, specifically with regards to everybody's favorite bugbear on AMD in terms of the software side, ROCm. And will ROCm be supported on all client devices moving forward?
So I don't think this is going to be a focus of the event. There will be some session about the software.
Yes.
Because one thing that AMD has to showcase is that their software stack adapts to machine learning, either for people wanting to write their own kernels or people using frameworks.
Yeah.
However, in terms of support on consumer, that's literally going to be the biggest afterthought.
Yeah,
at the event. So
the best that you could hope for is we are going to support ROCm on client devices moving forward. That's like literally the best that you could expect. Anything more, and even if they talk about it at all, would be sort of icing on whatever cake.
Yeah, so ROCm is basically the software stack, kind of like Cutress, the software stack for Nvidia. But yeah, so we're likely to hear about the Xilinx AI engine and maybe some advancements there.
Yeah.
What that will say to the consumer is it may determine what the consumer AI looks more like, at least the architecture on the AI side is going forward. We'll hear from Victor Peng, who was formerly the head of Xilinx and now heads up AMD's AI division. He's a smart dude. He's actually really friendly to talk to.
I've not had the pleasure to talk to him yet.
So to be honest, I've spoken to him once properly, one-to-one, and then like a couple of times at events, but very briefly, like in Q&A sessions. I met him when Xilinx when he became CEO of Xilinx. He basically went on a world tour meeting clients and press. Just to showcase that he was the real deal, and I got a chance to speak with him in London. And he says, so that was interesting at the time. That was like 6 years ago now. So I fully expect Victor to get up on stage and talk about machine learning and AI at the Advancing AI event. But in terms of anything else, I think that they might do some basic stuff about how if you do machine learning on Epic, and they might have another couple of libraries for like ZenDNN or something.
Depending on what AMD does, you may, because they were mentioning it before, maybe we'll get some information on if, and this is really hopeful, if Zen 5 supports FP16, AVX512 FP16, potentially,
maybe.
But
it's a bit too early for Zen 5. I think Zen 5 is perhaps more of a next year Q1, end of Q1, Q2 discussion. Yeah. That's about the right time. I don't think we'll hear anything about it in CES in January. Yeah, it's still too early. Good night, Eski. I know it's really early. It's we had planned to do this earlier in the day, but we just...
And then things went sideways, as they normally do.
Well, we went to Micro Center, where I found Samsung 990 Pro 4TB SSDs cheaper than pretty much every other SSD in the store. Yeah,
it was cheaper even than 860 Evos, which is just insane.
990 Pro for cheaper than an 870 Evo, sorry. Yeah. So AMD has that event. The day before is like Lattice's DevCon, and they're announcing new mid-range FPGAs there, and they'll have an AI focus as well. I know there's a couple of analyst events around there where they'll also have focus. After that is IEDM, the IEEE event for devices, which I love to go to. I'll be there for IEDM in case any of you guys will be there. There's just a lot of events happening come tail end of the year. We have this event, then you guys in America have Thanksgiving, And then, everything coming at the end of the year. We also have RISC-V Summit this week as well.
That was, last week.
Yeah. What day is it today? Saturday.
Oh, yeah. No, it was this week.
Technically this week.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, it's... how far are we into?
There might be a Micron event. I'm not positive.
Micron event?
Micron.
An event?
Yeah.
I've not heard of one.
Okay. Then maybe it's just...
Yeah.
Maybe not. I was just noticing on the
chat,
yeah.
So given that I mentioned RISC-V Summit, let's talk about the story that a couple of weeks ago was what I was focusing on. And this is the topic of sci-fi.
Oh boy.
Right. So let me just go through the story and catch everybody up. So out of the RISC-V players, one of the most prominent that most people know about is called Sci-Fi. Sci-Fi, essentially, the founders of Sci-Fi, who still own the RISC-V trademark, created the original spec for the for the ISA, for the instruction set. And they started a company called Sci-Fi, and the goal of Sci-Fi was to develop RISC-V IP to license in a sort of similar licensing model to ARM, but a bit more flexible and customizable. And the company is a startup, raised a few $100 million, and was expanding a full portfolio of RISC-V cores, anything from microcontrollers to embedded cores, to scalar cores, to vector cores.
Yeah, all the way up to even trying to make not just a single board computer like the Raspberry Pi, but even trying to move into sort of the laptop or low-powered desktop range.
Yeah. It's I have the Hi-Fi Unmatched system, which is a quad-core 1.5 gigahertz thing.
Yeah, it's U74 if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and they made deals with Intel to make Horse Creek on Intel 4. That's kind of disappeared or whatever.
Yeah, that's gone the way of the dodo.
Yeah, and what happened a couple of weeks ago is that I got the tip off that they were making mass layoffs, which, given the industry that we're in, it happens. Yeah. The size of the layoffs were a little concerning. I'd heard anywhere from, say, 30 people to 300 people, which in a company of 500
is a lot.
Would be insane. Two numbers came up more than anything else, 70 and 140. And then also commentary about the portfolio being reduced, right? So all these IP cores being reduced and the focus going more into semi-custom. So like any good person who's been in journalism for 10, 12 years, whatever, even though I'm an analyst now, I set out and I tried to verify this information because it's quite a thing. Yeah, it's quite a thing to lose so many of your people, especially when you have all these investors and all this money. So I reached out to a few people, a few people who are well known and a few people who aren't, and I said, are you hearing this? Can you confirm any of this? And like I say, I got a few numbers thrown at me, and it's like people saying yes, I can confirm, or I've heard rumors, but I basically did my due diligence. I got things second, third, fourth verified. The only thing I didn't get necessarily concretely verified is the thing about the product portfolio, about what the level of contraction was. Then I reached out to Sci-Fi's PR agency, right? Now, if you're unsure about how this industry works, you have companies, and they may have a PR team. They definitely have a head of communications, but a lot of companies will use what are called PR agencies. And the goal of PR agent, one of the roles of the PR agent, is to interface with the media, with press, with analysts. They'll also have other roles like managing advertising, either online or print, or web or magazines or whatever. And so I reached out to the PR agency that Sci-Fi uses. Now, this is an agency I've worked with for over a decade. The agency is fairly big. They have had lots of clients, In the past, they had Huawei as a client, and through them, I went to visit Huawei in China 2 or 3 times. They've also had smaller companies as clients. It just so it turns out that this time around, their client was Sci5. So I reached out to my contact there and I said, hey, look, I'm writing a story and about Sci5 layoffs being quite substantial and a reduction in the product portfolio. Do you have an official comment that I can use in my article? And I initially got a message back saying, I'll look for you, I'll get in contact and see what they want to say. And within 24 hours, I got a message back. It was like 3 sentences or so. And so I went ahead with my story and I said, the risk of RISC-V, Sci5 is laying off a lot of its people. And I mentioned in the written piece, in the video, that I had heard numbers anywhere from 30 to 300, but the numbers I heard most were 70 to 70 and 140, just 2 separate numbers. And then this product portfolio reduction. Here's the official statement. I published that. So I responded to the official statement saying, can you comment specifically on the exact number and the portfolio? And I didn't get a response back, so I decided to post. Within 2-3 hours of posting, I did get a response, which is basically the same thing but a bit longer, confirming a 20% headcount reduction. Right? I'd also initially said that I had heard that most of the people who'd been cut were engineers, which is, for a company size of 500, is substantial.
Yeah.
They said it was 20% of the company, which is about 130 people.
Yeah. Well, if it's 500, wouldn't it be 100 people?
450, 500, I'm rounding.
Okay, so then it would be about 100 people.
Yeah, so, and they didn't mention anything about did they mention anything about portfolio second time around? Yeah, no, they said they'd keep the portfolio. They also said the cuts were proportional across the business.
Yeah, which is saying.
I'd also heard they'd cut the entire executive team except for the founders and the CEO, right? And they said actually no, it's proportional across the company. And then I'm here. After that, I updated my article, as you do with the new thing, and proportional across the company could mean anything. It said proportional based on the direction of which the company wants to take. If the company wants to take a non-engineering direction, they're going to cut a lot of the engineering team. Or vice versa. There are so many ways of doing this. And it was about that time that one of the main investors on LinkedIn wrote a post that basically said, building chips is hard. It's frustrating when people who've never built chips bring you down. Or words to that effect. Which sounds kind of screwy.
Yeah.
I was going to use a more colourful word. And then one of the founders...
It's your live stream. You can say what you want.
Yeah. Then one of the co-founders of Sci5 wrote a similar post on LinkedIn saying, essentially, it's a shame that these people do it for the clout, do it for the recognition, do it for the clicks. And that kind of pissed me off. When have I ever done anything for the clicks? It's...
Yeah, that
I had done my due diligence. I had verified these numbers. I had reached out to them, and they had given me a statement.
Yeah, and the statement was a nothing burger. So it's like, okay, well then.
Well, the first version of the statement was nothing. The second one had some extra things in. Then I got an email from a person from senior management. I won't say who. I won't say his position. Basically, it wasn't accusing me of lying. He was frustrated that I was posting untruths.
Which ended up being actually fairly accurate, at least so far that we can tell.
Well, given the fact that A, I'd verified the numbers, B, I had asked for a comment and got one, and C, I'd asked for them to comment specifically on the points I was making, I responded to him. You know, it's what I would call an aggressive email that somebody with a thick skin or a thin skin wouldn't have taken
it very lightly.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't take it quite lightly. I basically went through the process of, basically how I'm telling you what happened, just to fill him in on what was happening on, because he gave me his personal phone number and said, if you had reached out to me before this, we could have given you our side of the story. I was like, I did reach out to you.
Yeah.
Through the official channels I was supposed to.
And
the response I got was...
At that point, if the official channels failed, you can't go blame.
It's also, I'd never spoken to this guy before. Of course, I'd never had his number before. I now do. But I turned around and I said, look, this is what I've done, right? I don't necessarily appreciate you saying that some of the stuff you did, but I really appreciate the ability to contact you about this in the future. I'm going to be in the Bay Area soon. The offer is available. If the CEO would like to come on the channel as an opportunity to showcase the work Sci5 has done and the direction going forward, in his own words, for the benefit of Sci5. I mean, that's what interviews are, essentially. And a chance to answer some questions about where you're going and put the best foot forward. The offer of the interview was declined.
Or was it formally declined?
Well, they said, he'll be on the East Coast during that time.
Okay.
And then they put out a long blog post about the direction of the company. And then RISC-V Summit was last week, where they had a very... I didn't go. I wanted to go, but I had another client event, a paying client event I went to. And the main Sci5 presentation didn't happen because the guy was ill. Their booth apparently was a little bit smaller than it had been in previous years. And speaking to a few peers who went there, apparently I'm on their shit list.
I mean...
Which...
And I know for a fact I personally am also not on some of their bestest graces, because one of the people that reached out to Ian when I was asking questions at Hot Chips came up to me and said I was wrong about the ratification process that the vector ISA for RISC-V has gone through. Yeah. Well, I approached the person and I showed them on their own website and on their own GitHub that no RISC-V vector ISA has yet to be fully ratified. It's in version 1.0 and it's what's considered frozen. The ratified version is going to be version 2.0. And this person just basically dismissed what I was saying, which was quite infuriating, to put it lightly.
So I have spoken to a member of the board of directors of RISC-V International, the standards body, and I told him this, and he said he confirmed that the vector standards have been ratified.
Okay.
Right. He's also part of a company who's using them for a start. And I told him this. Well, what's available online, what may be ratified internally among members, is still listed as not ratified, frozen externally for anybody trying to look externally for this. And he went, that's probably something wrong with the website. Somebody hasn't updated the forms. To which I said, that's not... I understand where the consortium is coming from, because it's a consortium for members, first and foremost, and some guy looking on the internet who's not a member.
Yeah.
But the whole point of it being an open standard is that when things are formally pushed through that everybody's updated, internal or external. He was like, yes, that should happen. So he hasn't been a board member long, but they've been involved with RISC-V for a while. So he said, give it a bit and I'll look into what's going on. So it could just simply be, somebody screw up somewhere. But unfortunately, it does confuse the people who communicate externally about it.
Yeah, and then what really made me angry was just the dismissal. Because I was like, well, maybe you guys should update this more often. And I was just, like, literally the stare of death from this person. Mm-hmm. And it was like, come on. I'm trying to help you. Because, frankly, so a large issue right now with at least the vector ISA is that it's been fragmented. And part of it is that all you can get currently right now is the vector ISA version v0.7.1, which is all you can get in hardware that I can go buy and spend money on. Now, maybe that's not the most up-to-date version in someone's lab, but I don't care about somebody's lab. I care about what I can go to AliExpress or Amazon and go buy with cash or with a credit card or something. I don't care what some spec sheet says because I can't run a program on a spec sheet. I can only run a program on hardware. Well,
or a simulator.
Or a simulator, and there's just none of that available.
Yeah.
So
it's so I have spoken with the CEO of RISC-V International as well, Callista Redmond. I spoke to her things about this and profiles and system level, standardizations. She said they're coming. Obviously ARM in the industry has done this in the past, except ARM was a closed standard.
Yeah.
And they took 2 decades.
Yeah. Well.
Right. So RISC-V, the whole system is doing it in the open.
Yeah.
Right. So they're open for a lot of criticism, and because people are so used to having it on ARM, they feel like it should all be accelerated as well.
Well.
So.
Well, okay. That's sort of. I have a bit of a bugbear there because there are some extensions like the L extension, which is for, if I remember correctly, decimal binary operations. No one cares about that, frankly. Like I should say no one. The amount of people that care about that over something like packed SIMD is nearly zero. Like, and that's my issue.
No, but it's open. Somebody submitted that.
But why wasn't this already on? So, okay, you can say that, but my counterpoint is ARM has had PackSIMD for how long? x86 has had PackSIMD for how long? Power has had PackSIMD for how long? Like the fact that they didn't even think about something like that that's been across the industry for years and years. And instead they're focusing on potentially allowing a VLIW implementation. Like, you're focusing on arguably the wrong things.
It's they focus on what the members, focus on. But because it's a consortium, you can imagine you have a lot of cooks.
Yeah.
Whereas with ARM, you had somebody rubbing sticks.
Yeah, but I mean...
There's a fire, just that nobody knows what to put in it.
Yeah.
Whereas ARM, they've got a pot, but they just can't get the fire going.
Yeah, but it again, it's this whole idea of...
They'll get there.
Eventually,
They'll get there.
But like...
So sorry, you're young.
Yes, I know, but like, can I not be frustrated by this?
I'm 15? No, 10 years older than you.
No, you're older than that.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm thinking where I was at your age. You have it good, my friend.
But that's not my point. Like, because, okay, for like Chips and Cheese.
Back in my day. Sorry. Chips and Cheese, the website that published their Pentium 4 review 22 years late.
But my point is that we built on what you, like, at Inintech wrote. We built on what David Shore wrote. We built on what, essentially, the giants wrote. And we didn't take forever to implement stuff like this. Like, yes, I understand that ISA is difficult. Like, don't get me wrong. I understand that. But it comes down to you already have what the industry is doing. Like, you've known for years. Like this is not acceptable to me. Like, you know what?
I have 2 words to say to you. Machine learning. Machine learning. Yeah, speed everything up, baby. Speed everything up.
But it's...
Okay, so let's topic change because this could go on for a while.
Yeah.
Machine learning. I briefly wanted to mention this because it's absolutely hilarious. And John Ross is doing an amazing job. John Ross is the CEO of a company called Grok. G-R-O-Q. They have the Grok 1 TSP, which is actually in the upcoming episode of the AI Hardware Show. Since we recorded that, they've renamed it the LPU, Language Processing Unit, because everything has to be LLMs. And there just so happens to be a chatbot that was launched in the last week or so from Twitter, X, called Grok, as in to Grok, G-R-O-K.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, and especially for those who thought it was an AMD trademark a few years ago, Hassan, I'm looking at you. I told you it was a word, essentially a verb to mean to understand, to grok something, and you were like, no, this is going to be an AMD product, and it wasn't. You can check that trademark has expired now.
And he was looking at me like I was ranting.
Yeah. Muskie has launched a chatbot called Grok, G-R-O-K. I believe this is something like a 25 billion parameter model. So it's not as big as like Llama 270, but they claim it's more accurate than Llama 270. So it is what it is. And John Ross at Grok, G-R-O-Q, that company, because again, it's a play on the name Grok, a play on the word Grok to understand. They say, wouldn't it be fun if Grok ran on Grok? It probably runs on Nvidia.
Yeah.
Because most of those...
Or maybe Dojo, maybe.
No, Dojo's not built for that.
Okay.
Dojo version 1 is, the primary use case is video labeling.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right, and then secondary, it's all computer vision based, basically. But yeah, so the idea, Grok is a company, their chip, the unique element of their chip is it does batch 1 latency very well. And because it's a deterministic design. So at compile time, you know how long your inference is going to take, how long it's going to take to generate a few tokens.
Yeah.
And so their whole thing is, why not use Grok on Grok? I'm going to meet with John Ross, I think, this week. Yeah, I've got scheduled time with him.
Okay.
So as of those who know, John Ross was one of the main architects on the first couple of TPUs at Google. So he has pedigree in this stuff. We are waiting for Grok 2. Again, this is all in the AI hardware episode, which I'm hopefully going to launch tomorrow. I have 7 episodes to launch by December 6th, because episode 12 of the AI hardware show, I mentioned MI250X, and I talk about MI300 in the future context.
Yeah.
So I can't publish it after MI300 gets launched. Dom's been working heavily editing those. I've taken my time actually going back through. The original plan for the AI hardware show was going to be an episode a week for 3 months. It's taken us 7 months to get 5 episodes out, which is mostly my fault.
Timelines? What are those?
Yeah, it's Sally and I have started talking about next year's. We'll probably start filming that in January. And now that we know how much work goes into it, we'll plan it better, we'll time it better, we'll get it edited quicker, we'll put it out there. We're going to be canvassing soon for sponsors as well, so to make sure it's fully funded. So that's going to be fun, and there's a lot new. There's much new hardware. Facebook's got their inference chip out now, the MTIA.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing stuff like that, and there's crazy amounts of companies now. Some of them being acquired, some of them have almost died. We've not heard from GraphCore in about 8 months since they almost died. CMO reached out to me, said, "Hey, let's have a chat." I said, "I'm away for 2 weeks, but let's organise something." And then I never heard from her again. So,
well, I know recently they were in the news for basically saying we don't have enough money.
Well,
so.
The reports that one of their investors basically wrote off a $200 million investment.
I believe that was Microsoft. That's public.
I heard it was Sequoia.
Oh yeah, no, Sequoia did because the Microsoft Azure deal with GraphCore fell through. So that's that's what I was confusing in my head.
Yeah, Christopher Jackson in chat says GraphCore architecture has issues. Basically, it doesn't do transformers that well. So it was built in the CNN era of AI, and
that's long.
For Gen 2, rather than update it with new silicon, they went and did the wafer-on-wafer stuff.
Which was neat, but...
So to be... No, it's Esky Monster. Thanks for the 20 krona.
I know I'm not the thinnest person out there, but I'd rather not make a fool of myself.
He did say earlier in the chat, if I donate money, can I make... Ian do a jumping jacks, and I responded saying no. that wasn't an invitation. So I don't know. It's they still seem to have research papers with the hardware being mentioned. That's been decreasing though. Hey, I'm happy to talk to GraphCore if anybody at GraphCore is seeing this and they want to have a chat about where the product's going. I mean, my opinion can only go up.
That's not a good thing to say, but...
it's...
Yeah. I guess if you have no opinion, then it can only go up.
I will say this. Last time I spoke to them, they briefed me on a project that they were working on called basically a supercomputer for 120 million that could do 10 exaflops of reduced precision compute.
What FP? What?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was. I wanted to do a video at the time. I probably still could, and the title of the video, I think I mentioned it on camera before. Who wants a good computer? Because they called it the Good Computer. Named after Jack Good.
So
buy a supercomputer called the Good Computer. So the video was going to be who wants a good computer. So. The Paradoxy asks, are transformers really that amazing? Won't it be something new in a year or two? So we've gone from convolutional neural networks, which did really well for visual processing, to transformers. And transformers are what's taking LLMs by storm.
Yeah.
And everything beyond that has been variants of transformers. Does this mean we're digging down a hole into a local minimum? Maybe. There's still research going on other things, but... It's a case of people have to find out what works, and it turns out transformers are really good for these large foundation models so far. So, we have been going for almost 2 hours at this point.
I see the last bullet point there.
So let's cover this. I haven't done a video on it yet. Except I interviewed Gerard Williams.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Snapdragon X Elite. This is Qualcomm's new laptop processor built using their ARM license. That's not a topic we'll address today.
Oh boy.
But however, it is Windows on Snapdragon, Windows on ARM, whatever you want to call it. It's a 12-core chip using their new Orion core. This is the core that was built using the team they acquired at Nuvia.
Yep.
Because of the lawsuit, I'm choosing my words very carefully there.
Yeah.
And even when I spoke to Gerard, he said the bones of the concept, essentially were from the team that was acquired. And what they end up with when you take the team that are used to building high performance ARM or other cores, and you say, can you build a new one for laptops? They've built what looks like a very performant, based on their benchmarks.
Yeah.
However, their benchmarks were run by Andre, who used to be at Nantec. So I trust the benchmarks.
Yeah.
I still want to run my own, but I do trust them. Very competitive against x86 and other ARM.
Yeah. And something that I don't know if it's necessarily disseminated or widely, I shouldn't say understood, but servers and laptops have more in common with each other than either of them have with desktops to some degree. So like a large thing with servers is energy efficiency. Well, that's a big thing in laptops. So if you're building this very good server core, it's quite likely that you could probably take the bones, or maybe even the bones and some of the meat of it, and move it into a laptop core pretty, I wouldn't say easily, but...
Yeah, so servers don't need high single-threaded performance, usually. You just have to meet a minimum.
Yeah.
Right? The laptops do have single-threaded performance, but you can optimize for that. Whereas desktops want lots of many cores with single-threaded performance. Yes. So, and we were seeing it with desktops all the time. You make a faster core, then you make an efficient core.
Oh, hello, Intel.
And then you do core. And then you do performance, efficiency. Core. It's a cycle. Yeah. It's a TikTok flop cycle. I don't know. So efficient cores in server and efficient core. It's the reason why Zen 4C is now in notebooks, right? It's the reason why E-cores are doing pretty well in notebooks.
I mean, Threadripper was never really, calling that desktop is pulling it, is going a bit on the, you're stretching definitions here. So, yes, it was high-end desktop, but I don't know how I feel about that one, Daryl.
But so Orion showcased, Geekbench 6 scores of 3,200 in Linux.
Yes.
Which was competitive again. If you looked at the best Intel has to offer at the time, that was higher than Intel. And then you compare the Windows numbers with the Mac numbers, and that was also better.
Yeah. Now, you did see I'm not going to say a significant, but a noticeable performance decrease moving from Linux to Windows on ARM.
It's Windows overhead.
Yeah.
It's not a translation overhead.
Yeah.
Because Windows is native. It just Windows does extra things in the background automatically for security. Yeah. They didn't test the same CPU in Linux and Windows for Intel, which I think was a little bit of a mistake. Perhaps because Intel's had so much experience, they can minimize that difference a lot more than Qualcomm can. But so the Linux number was purely more of an architectural showcase.
What can it really do when you unshackle it and just push the pedal to the metal? Yeah.
Whereas the Windows numbers were more of they were comparing it against chips. They think they're going to be price competitive again, or the devices are going to be priced against. So you end up with 12 Orion cores in this chip. No efficiency cores.
No efficiency cores per se, but some of the cores were, if I remember, certain discussions were essentially they would hold a lower clock speed. So sort of like what AMD's doing with Zen. Think Cryo from back in the day, sort of that E-core. They're holding they're not boosting as high.
Well, no. So it does have turbo.
Yes.
It has two core turbo for a 12-core system up to 4.3 gigahertz, but the base peak frequency is 3.8.
Yeah, so
The
all
idle
turbo.
the idle frequency may be 800 megahertz.
Or even lower.
Or even lower, yeah. So,
but
there's no distinct big little.
Yeah. There's no Intel like P core and E core. It's just
P cores.
If
It's just P and P plus.
yeah.
I spoke to Gerard and I said, so what, do we consider this to have 12 efficient cores then? And he was like, well, yeah, it's pretty efficient, regardless of what frequency you run it at. What this does is it actually makes Windows scheduling a lot easier.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about where the workload has to go when all the cores are the same.
Yeah.
So that's going to help on the scheduler side. We'll see what happens on the battery life side.
Yeah.
GPU has a big boost. It's going to have Qualcomm's Hexagon AI engine. That's going to be on there. A lot of criticism that I've seen coming in is, but Windows on ARM sucks, right? It's a project that's been going on more than a decade.
Yeah.
With Qualcomm, it's been about 5-6 years.
The joke is it's Windows on Qualcomm, not Windows on ARM.
Yeah.
Right?
But the several things. One was having ARM native software.
Yeah, that was a big thing because I remember back when Chrome on Windows was x86 only.
Yes.
So you were having to translate, and it was just painful.
So most of the major business software has ARM native versions now.
Okay.
And so some of that is also Apple driven as well.
Yeah.
Right, because you have a version of Microsoft Office for
on
Apple.
Mac.
Yeah. So also Adobe.
Yeah.
Right, so there's some synergies there, even if it's technically a different OS. You just have to sort out the dependencies and whatever. And these chips, ultimately, the biggest winner where they're going to be is in B2B systems, business systems. So as long as you can solve all the business software, that's where that is. Then so say 90% of the software now that most people will run is native. What's left?
Good enough.
Translation, right?
Yeah.
And translation comes in multiple parts: performance and compatibility.
Yes.
Right. And when I spoke to Qualcomm a couple of years ago, Miguel Nunez, who was leading that division, he was saying the translation was actually fairly easy, right, to get done. What was difficult was the amount of crappy software that uses either non-standard libraries, beta libraries, badly linked libraries, and just installers that had no guardrails to any of this crap.
Yeah.
And it means that you end up playing whack-a-mole based on individual versions of installers to get this crap to work. And he essentially likened it to, or at least I interpreted it later, to be like GPU drivers, right?
Oh, God.
Right. Whenever a new game comes out, you have drivers that work, but if you want drivers that are optimized, you have to download the latest update. Imagine doing that for every freaking Windows installer from every script kiddie that's ever bundled software.
And then, so
solve that issue, number one. Two, when you can't, you need fast translation.
Yeah.
And the point is, if you look at the Geekbench numbers between HCX Gen 3 and Orion, there's no contest.
Well, okay, I would argue you shouldn't expect a contest because the 8 Gen 3, by the time Orion finally launches, by the time it officially launches, it's going to be, what, four-year-old architecture?
Yeah.
Like, to expect that one could even get close to the other, either you've,
Right, so I think to a certain extent, that will help most. Right. What it won't help is like the video software, editing software I use, it actually comes from a Chinese company. It's called Wondershare Filmora, anybody that's interested. I picked it because it was that nice mix between all the flashy thing that Adobe does and Windows Movie Maker. And it's if you've ever used CapCut, the interface looks very similar, but it's a bit more involved.
Out of my realm here.
So I don't expect that software to have a native ARM version. So it would have to be translated. But but it's also software that takes advantage of GPU acceleration when it's written for it.
Yeah, and that's something else that's sort of a bugbear for Qualcomm on Windows, at least, is that their GPU stack is basically...
Let me finish my point first.
Okay, fair enough.
Right, the point is about software is that for a software like that, where it's going to be translated, but the software itself deals with optimized accelerator code, it won't do well for that. My auto hotkey scripts, I've got a feeling there might be something issue there, especially if it has to go through a translation layer. I use software like Faststone. Will Faststone be still fast? Right, there's that because there's not an ARM native version for that. Or things like WizTree, Windurstat, or whatever. So there are little things that I can see myself going, if I get one of these systems, there will be some pain points that I wouldn't get with a modern Windows system.
Yeah. Well, powered by an x86.
Yeah, but an x86 system.
Well, powered by either AMD or Intel. If you're talking about Xiaoshin, who knows about that one?
Different one, but yeah, and yeah, the thing that you were going to is about the GPU acceleration. Yeah. So much software these days does have, elements, either SIMD elements or video encoders. So this Snapdragon X Elite supports DirectX 12.1, but it's beyond that, isn't it?
Yeah. So as far as I'm aware, currently at least on 8th Gen CX3, so the prior Gen 2 Orion, or X Elite, there's only essentially a DX12 driver, and everything else from there is just a translation layer. So like DX11 on 12 or DX9 on 12. I believe there's also Vulkan on DX12. There's a lot of translation there. And
if you thought CPU x86 translation was difficult, GPU translation is just another.
Yeah, that's foot guns 15. Yeah, for 15 miles.
So they didn't show off any real world gaming demos at the announcement. They had a GPU test, Aztec Ruins, based on GFX Bench. They had a 3D Mark test, which is
it was Wildlife Extreme.
Yeah, no, but that's more that is very much a more desktop x86 laptop test.
Actually, the phone test, if I remember correctly, Wildlife Extreme is primarily for phones. They don't actually recommend it for.
Well, it was 400 odd frames per second.
Yeah.
No, Aztec was 400. Sorry.
No, Aztec was 400. I don't think they actually announced the Unless my memory is serving me right. I don't think they actually announced what the FPS in Wildlife was.
Yes, they did.
They did?
I think it's like 40.
Maybe. I can't remember. It's flying and lots of stuff. So
yeah, it's still a video I should make. I was going to make it, and then Apple had their announcement, and I really wanted to get the Gerard interview out before the Apple event. So that took, and I was flying back from Maui to London at the time. So trying to fit all that in and still exist in my head in one piece. But yeah, so Snapdragon X Elite, expecting to come out mid to end of Q2.
Yeah.
So we're still a good time away. The one thing that I think was impressive is how many systems they say they've got lined up. I heard numbers. And I can't remember if I heard this from Qualcomm or from somebody else, but given the amount of partners that they had there, it sounds like they're going to have 17 systems in the market with Snapdragon X Elite. I don't think if you added up all the previous generations on Snapdragon with Windows,
you would get there, but
I don't think you would.
On Windows, now I'm having to remember all of them.
Well, no. None of the generations. Some of those generations only had one device.
Maybe two. But
so I'm thinking. If you took out all the surfaces, you wouldn't hit 17. If you added surfaces, you'd have some.
I'm including the surfaces. So
yeah. So but this is going to be the biggest
Yeah.
launch
Definitely.
for Windows on an ARM architecture that there's ever been. And then Apple's M3 family was announced.
M3, just the only one that's sort of interesting, at least to me, is the Max. The M3 Pro was very much a disappointment, to be frank.
Oh, because of the reduced memory frequency.
Not just that. Well, no, the reduced memory bandwidth,
that's
weird move from 8+4 to 6+6, the cut in the GPU. It was just bizarre.
Well, no. Sorry, the worst thing is the 8 gig memory model.
Yes. Oh,
and then
God.
the comment about 8 gig on ours is like 16 gig on ours.
Apple, just please, no.
Credit where credit's due. It's the chips are still fast.
Yeah.
And the systems that those chips will go in will sell like hotcakes.
Of course. I mean, it's an Apple product. It's going to sell like hotcakes.
But I mean, they control the stack from bottom to top, and there are benefits to that. However, we've been going on for over 2 hours at this point. I don't tend to do 4-hour shows like Linus After Dark, but he has a team when we're in a hotel room.
Yeah, it's just Ian and I.
Yeah,
so.
Doing it on a whim. So if you do want, more of an Apple breakdown, or if you want to break down with Apple, then that's perhaps something we can perhaps do in a dedicated video later this week. So we've got time. Hopefully I'm going to film some more videos this week with George. I'm going to film some with Felix as well. I'm not going to film any with Linus, no. He's not here. He doesn't tend to come to this event. No.
Yeah.
If anybody did come to this event, it'd be Jake. And Jake's a laugh anyway.
I would have expected, funnily enough, Luke to appear.
What, here?
Yeah.
No, it's more software.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So I think we're going to go get some sleep. Was it almost 9?
Yeah, because that's in Pacific time. So yeah, it's 8:47 here.
Yeah. So for anyone who is at Supercomputing, if you see any of us, come say hi. Yeah. Tell us what you love about the channel or what you want us to change. Aside from our appearance, of course.
Yeah.
But have a good weekend and a good week coming up, and may all your chip dreams come true. So see ya.
Have a good one, y'all.